Hi everyone, I'm Kym of Wildcard Wanderer and welcome to my channel. This is my first ever YouTube video, so I hope you guys like and enjoy what I'm going to share with you today. In this video, I'm going to show you how to paint doors in watercolor, plus I will be sharing some watercolor painting tips for beginners. I've been painting for a few years now and I'm currently working on my door series, so I thought it would be fun to share some of the things that I have learned while doing the whole series. For this project, we are just going to use simple and basic things and materials, not really the pricey ones. First up, we're going to need a regular HB pencil, an eraser, a ruler, and of course some watercolor papers. I'm using these watercolor paper scraps from my previous projects and it is 200 GSM in weight. And as you see, I have drawn a border around the edges. So let's start sketching. If you do follow me on Instagram at Wildcard Wanderer, you are going to see that I sometimes post there projects which I call little paintings that usually measures around 6 by 4 inches. Now I do really recommend to practice painting on a smaller scale because it's less intimidating, there's less pressure, and it takes only a short time to finish a single piece. Right now I'm starting to sketch a door, which I pre-planned for this video, by the way. You could come up with your own composition, or you could simply copy the one that I'm drawing right now, so there's something easy for you to start with. Now in sketching, you don't have to make everything perfect at first. It's okay if your lines are wiggly or not straight. We are going to fix that later. I usually take inspiration from Instagram photos and photos from Pinterest or any other photo sharing sites on the internet. Now there are a wide variety of door designs to choose from, but for this video, I just chose to sketch the very simple ones. To make the drawing look more interesting, we are going to sort of accessorize the whole composition by playing with the design of the doorknob or the door handle, and you could add some things like a pot of plant, some blossoms, or even vines, whatever that you could see on the photo reference, or let your imagination go wild, whatever you could come up with your own ideas. After I finished drawing the door and the plant on the side, I decided to add the lantern or lamp beside the door because it's an essential among houses and it's really cute to add this little accessory on the drawing. As you see, I started speeding up the process and I added some brick patterns on the wall. I also started sketching 3 more examples for you. Just remember that doors come in different shapes and sizes, so it doesn't have to be rectangular all the time. After finishing the rough sketch, it's now time to fix the drawing by straightening the lines using a ruler. You could also correct the imbalance of the shapes. You could make the drawing more neat and clean by correcting mistakes using an eraser. This is also the time for you to add more intricate details that you wish to add, or whatever details that you see on the photo reference. After you finish all the sketches, now this is the very exciting part. Let's start painting. Let's start gathering the materials. First, we are going to need a set of watercolors, lots of water, a mixing plate, paper towels, and of course our sketch. Now let's talk about brushes. In painting, I usually use these Chinese brushes, but for this tutorial, we are just going to need the simple ones like this large round brush, a medium round brush, a 00 fine liner, a number 4 flat brush, and a number 8 flat brush we are going to use for large areas. So that's all, just 5 kinds of painting brushes. Now let me give you an idea about watercolor paints. In painting, I usually recommend to use just a set of 12 colors, which is composed of the warm and cool tones of the 3 primary colors, yellow, red, and blue, warm and cool greens, orange and purple, and a light and dark tone of brown. And that's because watercolor painting only requires a limited palette. We don't even need to use white and black. That is why when you are just starting out with watercolor, you don't have to buy a whole set of 48, 60, or 90 colors. Just a set of 12 colors is already more than enough for you to practice in watercolor painting. The next thing that you are going to need is that magic called color mixing. Now I'm going to start painting by using this color called lemon yellow, and I'm going to dissolve it with water, and with the help of the mixing plate, I would create a light, watery, and even consistency of the paint. Before we begin, I would like you all to know that in order to make a watercolor painting stand out, look interesting, and at least a bit realistic, we have to work with layers. However, the watercolor medium only allows us at least 3 to 5 layers. More than that, and our painting would look muddy and heavy, which is not really a good outcome for a watercolor painting. However, the best method in painting is to use the so-called deductive process. Now, what that exactly means? It only means that we should begin by working on the artwork as a whole, then gradually adding the layers in all parts of the sketch, and finishing it by adding the smallest details. It also means that we should avoid progressing portion by portion, because this usually leads either to an uneven color rendering or a lifeless outcome. So as you see here in this video, I started filling up the paper with all the washes for the base colors. Be sure that the base colors are the lighter shades of the actual colors that you wanted to achieve for your painting. And always have the paint in a light and watery consistency. This way you will less likely to commit mistakes in your painting, and you would avoid overdoing the colors. I continued doing all the necessary washes for my base colors. As you see, they are just very light and very minimal, and I was also using some basic shades of colors. I don't really overwhelm myself by adding these very complex shades or names of colors that you can't even pronounce or you're not familiar with. Be sure to make your painting look as simple as possible, because remember that our goal in watercolor is to create a light, bright, and airy artwork, and not muddy or heavy as acrylic paintings or oil paintings. During this step, you could already decide your own color scheme. You could choose warm colors or cool colors, or a combination of both. Having a nice or interesting color scheme is also a plus factor in making your painting look good and pleasant. It's also up to you whether you're comfortable in choosing to paint the background first or the main subject first. As I had mentioned earlier, in watercolor painting, it just requires a limited palette. That is why I just recommend to use a set of 12 colors or even less than that. And did you know that the best way to improve your skills in watercolor painting, you have to research about color theory, and you have to experiment on your own by just using the 3 primary colors, namely the red, yellow, and blue. Since watercolor is also a transparent medium, we are not allowed to use white, and I don't really suggest using black as well. Unlike in oil painting or acrylic painting, white is a very essential color. So in order to achieve a lighter shade of a certain color, all you have to do is to add more water. Now for the highlights of our painting, all we have to do is to reserve the white of the paper by just carefully avoiding touching that area with your brush and with your watercolor. Some artists even use the so-called masking fluid, if you're familiar with that. It's actually a rubber-like liquid which temporarily covers a certain area of the paper. To be honest, I'm not really a fan of masking fluid. I don't usually use that in my paintings. I just use the natural method of preserving the white of the paper unless a certain area is really impossible to avoid. And also, in this type of project, we don't have that very much complex details in our drawings, so it's really not necessary to use that masking fluid. After I finish the primary washes for the first drawing, I would let it dry first before adding the further layers, so I just went on with the second drawing and also 2 more drawings that we did earlier. Be sure to make the layers dry first before adding another one. Then I went back to the first piece. Since I used the lemon yellow earlier, I am now going to use this color called cadmium yellow, and I would like to use a little violet. Now the reason why I'm going to use violet is that I would like to achieve a darker shade of yellow, and the only way to do that is to add a bit of its complementary color, which is violet. And same goes with violet. If you want to achieve a darker shade of violet, then just add a tiny bit of yellow. Now I'm starting to add a second layer of color onto the painting. This color is more intensified than the first one. That means I only added less amount of water. Then I applied that color onto the areas where shadows most likely fall, or where the main color of the subject can be seen. As you can see in this video, I'm still very careful where I touch the color or the brush in the paper, because I wouldn't want to ruin the areas where I preserve the white of the paper for highlights. And working slow and surely is the best way for you to avoid committing mistakes, because in watercolor there's really no room for mistakes. You cannot erase once everything is done. So you just have to be very careful with your painting, and you'll surely get a nice result or outcome. Applying the cadmium yellow, let us now demonstrate what I was talking about earlier. So I'm going to pick up some yellow and put it in the mixing plate. Then I will add a tiny bit of purple in it to make a darker shade of yellow. Now I'm going to mix the 2 colors together until I achieve an almost brownish yellow color that I think would work best for the shadows of the door. And apply that color mix onto the edges of the door, like this, and here, and almost here, just a very fine line. Now, you can achieve this by using a smaller size of brush or a fine liner perhaps, but I've been already comfortable using just a large round brush and using the teeny tiny tip of that brush to achieve more finer lines for the details. To make a rather realistic look of the shadows, I would suggest to have a closer look to the details of your photo reference. If you're not using a photo reference, then try observing more onto real things or real doors, and that is how you're going to achieve a more convincing look of your artwork or painting. After I work on with the shadows, I further intensify the colors by returning to the cadmium yellow and returning to the areas where I wanted the color to pop out even more to make my painting look vibrant or stunning as much as possible. Here's another tip. I don't use the provided black color from the watercolor set that I bought. Instead, I make my own black using a rich mix of blue and brown. And if I needed to paint something in gray, I would simply mix blue and orange because it creates interesting shades of gray. I don't use the provided black because I think it's too flat for my paintings. The next thing that I'm going to do in this little painting, I will use the number 4 flat brush that I introduced to you earlier. I will use this color called burnt sienna. As you see, it's like a reddish brown color. I dip my brush into the paint and dissolve it a little with some water. And then I will start making these straight strokes onto the paper to create the brick patterns that we sketched earlier. Doing this kind of details, actually I find it therapeutic because all you have to do is to repeatedly do the strokes until you eventually finish the whole brick pattern of the wall. After I finish working onto the large areas of the painting, I am now narrowing it down to the smallest details, like this tiny pot of plant, and I'm creating the illusion of leaves and blossoms simply by making dotted strokes with my brush, with the tip of my brush, and putting just a little bit of paint in it. After I finished the first painting, I went on to the 3 more door paintings that I demonstrated for you. So remember, if you wanted to make a color darker, or achieve a darker shade of that particular color, all you have to do is to add a tiny bit of its contrasting color. Like when it's red, then just add a bit of green. When it's green, just add a bit of red. If you wanted to make a darker shade of blue, then just add a bit of orange. And if you wanted to make a darker shade of orange, then just add a bit of blue. As I progress with my artworks, I also keep in mind that in watercolor painting, we are working from light to dark colors. Since it is a transparent medium, the light colors wouldn't be able to cover up the darker ones. So be sure to apply the light colors first, then add the darker ones once the light ones are already dry. And that's it. I hope you enjoyed these little paintings of doors, and thank you for watching this video. So that's it, guys. Please do follow me on Instagram at Wildcard Wanderer. I always post my progress for my door series. I also do some more little paintings that I really enjoy sharing with you all. And also for you to be updated with my future projects such as speed painting videos and other YouTube tutorials. If you did enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. I hope you enjoyed this and find it helpful. Bye bye!